back to my channel and welcome back to another video. As you can tell from the title, today we are painting the Lava bookshelf from IKEA. Now I picked this bookshelf up because I had an empty corner in my room that I wanted to put it in. I have some plants that I needed a shelf for or some storage for, and I measured out the space and I looked online and found out that this bookshelf would fit in that space perfectly. So I picked up this bookshelf because it was only $20, which is super affordable. The only downside to this is that it only comes in black. I knew that wasn't gonna work for me, so my initial thought was to cover it in peel and stick wallpaper. I had some leftover that I never used, so I was going to do that. So this is the spot that the shelf is going in. Obviously, as you can see, I ran out of peel and stick wallpaper to put on the shelves, which is fine because I think it's going to be easier just to paint it anyway. I had a lot of issues with trying to wrap it around to the other side, and it creates a lot of bubbles that are very hard to flatten out, so it's just not worth the extra effort to get another roll of the same paper. Also, I ripped this piece already, so I would need more for that one also, but yeah, I think it would be better to just paint the whole thing white instead of trying to mess with covering it in peel and stick paper. But it definitely fits perfectly in this spot, and now all I need to do is paint it. So of course that meant a quick trip to Lowe's to pick up the supplies I needed for the painting, and then I got started. So apparently most of IKEA's furniture has a laminate finish on top, which makes it very difficult to paint when you just put paint on top of the laminate finish. So the trick is to prime your IKEA furniture with a shellac based primer so that the paint sticks and you won't have any problems. So that's exactly what I picked up from Lowe's. I got some shellac based primer, I got white paint, and then a clear shellac top coat. So I took the bookshelf down to the garage and I first sprayed on the shellac based primer and I let that dry overnight. And here we are the next day, and I painted on 2 coats of the white paint, and again let that dry overnight. Then I sprayed on the shellac top coat, and here it is all finished. It fits in the space perfectly, and now all of my plants have a new home. I will leave the shelf and all of the products I use linked down below in the description box. Leave any questions you have in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. What's up, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be turning this IKEA cube storage into a full-blown media console. I bought this because I needed some extra storage in this space and I knew the best spot to put it in would be directly underneath my TV. And fun fact, this is not an IKEA Kallax, even though it looks like one. It is actually called the Flysta. It is actually the exact same as the Kallax. The only difference is the size of the cubes are 11 by 11 inches. I decided on getting this one because it fit the space a lot better. The Kallax in the same 2 by 4 cubes would have pretty much taken up the entire wall space, and I didn't need that much storage. From Lowe's, I picked up 1 inch by 2 inch by 4 feet unfinished pine, and I used my sister's circular saw to cut them down to a 45-degree angle. Once the pieces were cut, I glued them together using this angle clamp that my sister also had. And after that dried, I used some wood filler to fill in any holes or gaps that I noticed. Once the wood filler was dry, I did another sanding and then took the frames outside to paint. After the paint was dry, I measured and cut the burlap down to size and stapled to the back of the frames. The burlap I found for a really good price on Amazon. It was super cheap, and I actually bought way more than I needed because I knew I would use it for other things. Then I attached the flat corner braces. So after attaching the flat corner braces, I measured out where I wanted the hinges to sit. I used 2.5 inch door hinges, even though the doors were very light because only the frame was wood and the majority of it was burlap. I was more worried about the hinges being able to hold the doors up because of how far the distance was from the end to the center. For attaching the feet were another thing that I got on Amazon. These particular feet came separate from the threaded screw that would attach them to the bottom of the Flysta unit, so I had to figure out a way to get the threaded screw into the feet and then attach them to the unit. So for that, I decided to drill a hole the same size as the threaded screw and then insert the threaded screw into my drill as if it were a drill bit and screw it in that way so that I knew it wouldn't go anywhere once I got it into each foot. I screwed in the mounting plates to the bottom and then screwed in each foot to all four corners. This is definitely not a professional way of doing this, but it did work out and it seems to be holding up pretty well. After that was all done, I turned it right side up. Once the doors were on, it was time to decide where I wanted to put the handles. I ordered these handles from build.com. They were also pretty inexpensive. I was back and forth between putting them dead center or slightly above. I felt like they needed to be higher up in order to account for the magnet once the door is closed and it catches to the magnet. I wanted there to be enough pressure to open the door. So I decided to attach them pretty much in the center of the top row of cubes. So I measured and leveled exactly where I wanted the handles to go and screwed those in as well. As you can see, there are some wires hanging out of the back, so that's why I didn't attach any plywood or anything to the back to close it all off, because I knew I would need access to outlets from back there, and we are pretty much done. And here is the finished media console. It's not perfect. There's definitely some things that I could fix if I really wanted to, but for now it works and I am very happy with the outcome. What's up? Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video. In today's video we are creating a West Elm inspired frame for this very old IKEA mirror that I've had for years now and never really knew what to do with. It was just a mirror that you mounted up onto a wall with some wall brackets. I really wanted to just upcycle it and give it another life. It is pretty small at less than 16 inches wide and only about 47 inches long. For the frame of this mirror, I am using some leftover 1/2-inch PVC pipe and 2 pieces of scrap 2x3-inch wood that will be the top and bottom. I start by cutting a groove into the PVC pipe by clamping down a piece of scrap wood onto the table just to have a brace on both sides, and I run the PVC pipe through the table saw with the saw blade up just high enough to cut through one side of the PVC pipe without going completely through the entire thing and cutting it in half. As you can see, the pipe lifted up a little bit while I was running it through the saw blade, so there is a small piece of the pipe that did not get cut in the middle, but that's okay. I can figure that out a little later on. Once that is done, I cut both pipes down to the size that I need them to be, which is around 50 inches, just to have about over an inch left to place into the grooves that I will be cutting out into the scrap pieces of wood later. After cutting down the PVC pipe, I moved on to trimming down the 2x3 pieces of wood to the exact length that I needed. Once I was done cutting all my pieces, I moved on to spraying the PVC pipe with a gold spray paint. This doesn't end up being the final color, but this is where I started. So yeah, I sprayed the PVC pipe with the gold spray paint, let that dry, and then moved on to sanding down the wood pieces. I sanded down the wood until it was smooth to the touch, so that it would be able to take the wood stain way better. And here you can see the difference in the two between the sanded and the unsanded, and how much the natural grain of the wood shows through on the sanded piece. And here I am realizing that when I am 95% of the way done, that I should have clamped down this board while I was sanding the entire time. Moving back over to the PVC pipe, once the gold spray paint was dry, I started adding in some of this alcohol ink. I saw a technique used with this, and I thought it would be a good way to get a metal finish on these plastic PVC pipes. So I basically just put a few drops onto the pipe on top of the spray paint and stippled it with a foam brush. And although the end result did end up looking good, it just wasn't the look I was going for. I was looking for more of a brassy looking finish, and it kind of ended up looking more like a faux wood. But at this point, I wasn't sure what the final result would be, so I just kept going with it and tried to make it work. And then someone got out of school and decided to give me a helping hand.
Scare me. What you doing? I'm painting. You want to help? Stoop down. You see yourself up here? It's too sunny?
Yeah.
Here was one of the pipes completely finished after layering multiple colors of the alcohol ink on top of it, and the finish is really nice. It just didn't work for this frame just because the color of the stain that I am putting on the wood didn't really go with it very well. Now I'm moving on to marking off and drilling out the holes that the PVC pipe will sit in, and this is actually how the mirror will be held into the frame. So having the groove cut into the PVC pipe, then having the wood pieces be the top and bottom to cap off the ends of the PVC pipe. To do this, I marked the center, and then I left about 1.25 inches on either end, and then used a drill bit with a piece of tape at the 1 inch mark to drill out holes deep enough for the PVC pipe to sit into. Once the holes were done, I moved on to staining the wood with Varathane stain in the color Early American. I just lightly brushed on the stain and then went back with a paper towel to wipe off any excess so it doesn't seep into the wood and make it a darker color than it actually is. Stain was dry, I put the wood pieces next to the PVC pipe and you can see exactly how much the colors don't go together. So I decided to move on and take the mirror into a different direction, and I started by spraying the PVC pipe again with a black spray paint and letting that dry. Once the black spray paint was dry, you can see that there are some like splotchy parts on the pipe. That's because the pipe kept falling off of those little risers, because they're not made to hold up like circular objects. They're made to like rise up flat surfaces. But anyway, I wanted to make this look a lot like the Inspo, the West Elm mirror, which has either an iron or a metal frame on the sides, and matte black clearly wasn't gonna do that. So I came up with the idea of spraying on some gray spray paint to make the black look a lot more like iron. The gray spray paint was added very sporadically, not in any specific spot, definitely not covering the whole thing. Once I was done adding on the gray spray paint, I stippled on some Rub and Buff in the black metallic finish, and that really made these plastic PVC pipes look like something that was more reminiscent of metal or iron. Once both the wood stain and the final color of the PVC pipes were dry, I just sprayed on a sealant of Rust-Oleum in a matte clear finish to just seal everything in. And now it's time to take all the pieces inside and put everything together. So I basically slid the PVC pipe onto the mirror by inserting the sides of the mirror into the grooves that I cut out in the pipe, and did that on both sides. Then I added a little bit of wood glue to each of the holes that I drilled out in the wood pieces, and then inserted the PVC pipe into those holes at the top and bottoms of the mirror, and we are all done. And here is the finished mirror with its new frame. Clearly not an exact dupe for the West Elm mirror. Obviously this is on a much smaller scale and not as big as the West Elm mirror would be, but if you could save over $500, why not? So let me know what you think in the comments. Would you try this with a mirror and some scrap materials you have laying around at home? That's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. What's up? Welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to another video. Now I may or may not be sitting at the DIY we are going to be working on today, but let's take it back to the very beginning. From Lowe's, I got 2 pieces of 4x4 by 8 feet and 2 pieces of 2x4 by 8 feet. I start by measuring and marking the 4x4 posts, and looking back on this now, I definitely could have used a second pair of hands. Even though the posts are manageable once they're cut, the original 4x4 is 8 feet long and is very heavy. So my 4x4 post or table legs I cut down to 35 inches so that with the additional 1 inch thickness of the butcher block on top, I'd have a 36-inch table height that will be the same height as the counters. I then cut my 2x4s, and I needed 3 pieces at 40.5 inches long and 4 pieces at 12.5 inches long. Next, I drilled pocket holes on both ends into all of my 2x4 pieces because that is how I plan to attach them to the 4x4 posts. After all of my pocket holes were drilled, I moved on to sanding all the pieces until they were smooth to the touch. Once all of the sanding was done, I assembled the short sides of the table base just because I felt like it would be easier to maneuver that way and easier to paint versus having to flip each individual piece over multiple times to prime and paint and seal. So I assembled the shorter sides together. Also, I knew that I wouldn't have much trouble moving the shorter sides inside of the house once they were done, and I could just attach the longer 2x4 pieces once they were in the house. So I screwed in the 12.5-inch 2x4s to the 4x4 pieces using pocket hole screws, also adding some wood glue in between. For the placement of the shorter 2x4 pieces, I put them at 1/4 inch in from the edge and placed the top piece flush to the top of the 4x4s, and for the lower piece I placed it about 6 inches from the bottom of the 4x4s. After the sides were fully assembled, I then added some wood filler to any of the larger holes or knots that I saw in the wood so that it wouldn't be visible once I started to paint. Once the wood filler was dry, I put on 1 coat of primer and let that dry and then sanded that down before I put on the first coat of paint. For the paint color, I used Rust-Oleum protective enamel in the color flat white, just to keep it cohesive with the cabinets, which were already white, and since we are adding in a butcher block top, that will be a different color from the actual countertops. So I felt like having the base of the table be white as well would tie in with the rest of the kitchen. For the sealer, I used Minwax polyacrylic water-based crystal clear top coat. So I did some research and found out that using a water-based sealer is probably the most effective way to keep white paint from yellowing, but it does take a little more effort in the fact that you need to sand in between coats and you need at least 3 coats to completely seal the entire thing off. Now that we're inside, it's time to put the entire table base together. So I started with the shorter sides flipped upside down so that I could put both of the longer 2x4 pieces in. Now I didn't have clamps that were long enough for the entire width of the 48-inch table, so I just made sure the 2x4 piece was level and then used a speed square to make sure all of my corners were at a 90-degree angle. For the final 2x4 piece, I clamped on some scrap pieces of wood to the 4x4 posts so that they could act as braces to hold up that 2x4 piece so that I could just screw in my pocket hole screws without having to worry about holding the 2x4 up. Once the first side was completely screwed in, I just double checked my level and made sure that the other side would be nice and square as well. Once the entire base was assembled, I noticed that there were a few spots that needed to be touched up with some paint. So after I did the touch-ups, I let that dry and sanded everything down and did one final coat of sealer so that everything would be nice and solid. I also added sealer to the top portion of the base, even though this will never be seen because the butcher block is going to be on top of it. I just wanted to add the sealer on here just to be safe. All of my sanding between coats happened off camera. Just so you know, I did 1 coat of primer, let that dry, sanded that down, did 2 coats of the flat white, let that dry, then 1 coat of sealer, let that dry, sanded that down, the 2nd coat of sealer, let that dry, sanded that down, and then took the piece inside to put on the final coat of sealer. Now that the final coat of sealer is dry, it's time to attach the base to the butcher block top. This butcher block came from Lowe's. It's actually a quick bench kit, and it comes with brackets that can be attached to a wall and collapse and can have the butcher block fold down. It was pretty affordable for a piece of butcher block considering the prices for butcher block on their own. I knew it would be perfect for a kitchen island in a smaller space because the dimensions are 20 inches wide by 48 inches long. So that's when I decided to just make my own base for this. Now this is going in a kitchen that has a much smaller footprint, and I felt like it would be the perfect size for an island in a kitchen that is this small. After positioning the base onto the butcher block, I measured 1/4 inch from each side of the 4x4 posts so that I could have 1/4 inch overhang all the way around. Off camera, I ended up drilling some pocket holes into both sides of the inner corners of the 4x4 posts so that I could attach the butcher block to the base that way. Once the top was secured on, I added these felt pads to protect the floors. I picked these up from Amazon. They are 4 inches by 6 inches. I just lined it up on top of one of the corners of the 4x4 posts, traced out the other edges, and cut out 4 individual pieces. I then removed the backing and stuck on one in each corner. And with the felt pads added to all 4 corners, it's now time to flip the table over and we are pretty much done. The bar stools I'm adding here are from IKEA. They are the Franklin bar stools. They're super affordable and pretty good quality in my opinion, and they match perfectly with the color scheme in the kitchen with the black hardware, so I thought they would be the perfect addition to this island. And with the bar stools added, here is the finished butcher block top kitchen island. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to a new DIY IKEA hacks West Elm dupe video. In today's video we are hacking my IKEA Rast nightstands. Now technically I've DIY'd these once before, but it was a very minimal DIY and I just stained them with a antique white wood stain and swapped out the handles for some inexpensive Amazon handles. So that means we are way overdue for a refresh. To start this DIY, I'm taking the nightstands apart so I can cut the sides down. Now I was trying not to completely take it apart, but I forgot all about the little dowels that holds all of IKEA's furniture together. These dowels do come in handy a little later. once it was taken apart, I clamped each side to a sawhorse and taped off my cut line. Once both sides were cut, I reassembled everything using wood glue, clamping it all together and brad nailing the sides in place. For the bottom of this, I thought I was going to need to get some plywood and cut it down to size, but I just ended up using the support pieces that you can see once the whole thing is taken apart. There is a piece on the front in the bottom, and then one piece in the middle towards the back, and those two pieces combined became my bottom support pieces. Once the outside was put back together, I moved on to giving it its first coat of paint. Now, since I stained the wood in the past, I'm counting that as a primer coat, so I just went straight in and started painting. Once the paint was dry, I sanded everything down, then applied a second coat of paint. Once that second coat of paint was dry, I put on 2 coats of water-based sealant, sanding in between each coat. While the last coat of sealant dried, I moved on to cutting down the molding for the front of the drawers. Now, to speed up this process, I clamped down a scrap piece of 2x4 at the 7.5 inch mark on the miter saw so that I could just place my molding on the saw without having to measure each piece individually. Because of the width of the drawers, I knew I would need 6 full pieces of the molding per drawer and a smaller section to fill the center. So for that, I trimmed down some of the molding lengthwise on the table saw. The next step was to attach the molding to the front of the drawers. I placed each molding piece where I wanted it, and this is where those dowels we removed in the beginning came in handy. I used them as spacers between each molding because they were the same size as the original groove in the molding and would be the perfect distance once the space is filled in. To attach the molding to the front of the drawers, I used wood glue, then clamped a piece of scrap wood down to hold all the molding in place while I brad nailed each piece in place one at a time. Once that was all done, I would fill the brad nail holes and let that dry, then sanded it down. After that, I used paintable caulk to fill in the gaps between each molding piece. I made sure to overfill the gaps so that once the caulk dried, there would be no holes or spaces in the caulk, and everything would be nice and smooth for painting afterwards. But before the caulk dried, I used the dowels again to scrape out the groove in between the molding pieces. The dowels were pretty much the exact same width as the grooves in the molding, so they were the perfect thing to use for this step. After notching out the grooves, I wiped away any excess caulk and let that dry. Once all of the drawers were dry, it was time to move on to painting them. I started by using a foam roller and then followed that up with a brush to get in between each groove, and did that for both coats of paint. And once that was dry, I did the exact same for the water-based sealant top coat. While that dried, I moved on to working on the legs. I found these legs on Amazon and I chose them because they were the most similar in shape to the original West Elm legs, but the color was a bit off. I needed the legs to match the handles, which, sidebar, sparked this entire DIY in the first place. I had these handles left over from when I was switching out the door handles on my IKEA PAX closet. I bought these handles in two sizes, a longer size and the shorter size, and ended up using the longer size on my IKEA PAX closet, so I had some leftover shorter ones that I wasn't using. So when I saw the West Elm nightstands with similar handles, a light bulb went off in my head, and here we are. So back to the legs. I used some rub and buff in the color Antique Gold and stippled that on with a paintbrush. Then followed that up with some alcohol ink, first in the color Ginger, and then layered the color Caramel to bring down the red tone of the ginger. While those dried, I glued the drawer tracks back into place using E6000 glue to create a strong hold for the drawers to sit on. For the handle placement, I measured the width of the drawer, marked off the center point, and placed a piece of painter's tape over that. Then found the measurement for the center of the handle, marked where the screw holes are, lined that up with the center of the drawer, and drilled pilot holes for the screws. Then removed the painter's tape and screwed the handles in. I then placed the legs on the bottom at about 3 inches in from the edge on both the front and back. And with the legs on, the nightstands are all done. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video. In today's video we are making over my 3-year-old niece's bedroom, which we are in right now. My sister recently redid the floors in here. She pulled up the old carpet and replaced all of the hardwoods, and once she was done with that, I told her she might as well let me go ahead and redecorate the entire room. We are actually starting on day 2 of this makeover. I took the liberty of doing the boring part off camera and painted the entire room yesterday, so we now have the color Pumice by Bear on the walls, which is a really good mid-toned gray color, and it goes very well with the wallpaper that I am going to put up. Speaking of wallpaper, that is the first thing on the to-do list for today. Hang up the wallpaper on the accent wall and paint out the trim. I actually want to paint whatever else needs to be painted in the room today and get it over with so that all the painting can be done and things can get moved around without worrying about having wet paint on the walls. The wallpaper is from Target. It has some very bright, vibrant colors in it, which my niece loves, so I knew it would be perfect for her room. And I ended up using 3 rolls in total. You'll see that the laser level is set a little further in from the corner of the wall, and that is actually because since the house is older, none of the corners or any of the walls are actually perfectly straight. So I had the vertical line of the laser level pretty much the same width as the wallpaper, or a little bit shorter, just so that the first panel that I put up is completely straight on a straight line, and then I can go back and put the corner panel up and just trim off whatever excess ends up in the corner. Wallpapering is all done, and I think that is it for me today. Here we are on day 2, and I put the bed back on the accent wall because that was in the original plan, which I can pop up a picture of the very rough draft that I put together in Photoshop. But yeah, so beginning of day 2, we put the bed in place, but it wasn't really working out, so that ends up changing in the end. Also, I picked up these wall hooks from Urban Outfitters. As you can see, they're lime green and there's no lime green in the room at all. So I just ended up spray painting them in a dark gray color that my sister already had in the garage. So that worked out really well. So I just took these outside to spray paint while I moved on to another project. Here is the next project. I picked up these wood letters from Lowe's, and they're just plain unfinished wood, but I knew I wanted to have the half and half look where half of it is wood and the other half is painted white. So I measured halfway down each letter, marked it off with a pencil, and put some painter's tape at that line and then painted them white. While the wood letters were drying, I moved on to hanging the bookshelves in this little corner over here that is cornered off by the closet. So I picked these bookshelves up from Target. They're actually from the dollar spot at Target. And I actually ordered them online because apparently if you search Bullseye Playground on Target's website, it'll show you all of the Target dollar spot items that they have available online. So to hang these bookshelves, I used my favorite hack ever, where you level a piece of painter's tape over the hanging mechanism on whatever it is that you're hanging. So for this, it's those notched out holes. So I leveled the painter's tape over those holes. You trace out the hanging piece, so I traced out the holes on the bookshelves, and then I level the tape onto the wall and screw through the holes that you made in the tape, and you have a perfectly leveled shelf, mirror, whatever it is that you're hanging. So that was perfect because I was going to make bookshelves or book ledges out of some scrap wood my sister had in her garage, but I didn't have to because I found these for $5 each at Target, and you really can't beat that price. And I feel like when it comes to DIYing, if it's cheaper to buy the item than it is to make it yourself, it's not worth the DIY. After the shelves were up, I checked on the letters and those were dry, so I just peeled the painter's tape off of them and didn't hang those up yet because at this point I'm still not sure which wall the bed is going to be on. So I decided to move on to hanging up the new curtains that I got from Bed Bath & Beyond. The color of these curtains matched the wallpaper to a T, so they were perfect for in here. And when the sun is shining and it's a really bright sunny day outside and the curtains are closed, it's kind of a pink light special in the room, which I think is really cute. So here we are on day 3, and this little corner of the room is going to be my niece's little book nook or reading corner. So I got this rug from Urban Outfitters also. It also tied in all of the colors in the room really well. The pink in the curtain, the brown in the floors. I thought it was just really cute and great for her room. In all honesty, I feel like Urban Outfitters has a ton of stuff that is perfect for kids or preteen and not really just for adults. So I put down the rug for the book nook, and then I put back a chair that she already had. It just wasn't in the before clip that I filmed. Her dad got this for her for Christmas one year, and it's such a cute little egg chair for kids. I don't know where it's from, but if I find out, I will definitely link it in the description box below, because it is so cute and it just makes her look like a big girl when she's sitting in it. Once the chair was in place, I put some of her favorite books on the bookshelves, and the room is just really starting to come together at this point. So moving on to this little elephant frame that I knew I was going to hang above my niece's bed. My sister bought this little stuffed elephant head for my niece when she was a baby, and I don't think she ever actually hung it up in any of her rooms that she's had, so I knew I wanted to use it in her room now. I've seen all over Pinterest where people use these heads and put a frame around them like they're a real like taxidermied animal head hanging on a wall. So I knew I wanted to do that, and my sister has a bunch of old home decor that she wasn't using in her garage, and when I saw this mirror I knew it would be the perfect frame for the elephant. So I took that. It's a little beat up, so I knew I needed to spray paint it. I took it apart and took the frame outside to spray paint, and once I saw the mirror on the inside was in the shape of a circle, I knew immediately that that was going to be another DIY that I was going to do. So for the mirror, this is another DIY that I saw all over Pinterest and knew I wanted to do in here, but I didn't know if I would actually get to, because I didn't have a circle mirror to utilize for this DIY, and I really wanted to try to use a bunch of stuff that we already had and not buy new things that were unnecessary. So once I took the frame off of this mirror and saw that the mirror on the inside was in the shape of a circle, I figured this was perfect. So I just created some tassels out of some jute cord, and I created enough to cover the entire mirror, and I laid them all out and glued them down with some hot glue. I then decided to comb out the fringe on the tassels to fill up the gaps a little bit more. Once that was done, I trimmed the ends so that they were all a similar length. After all the tassels were glued down, I actually decided to take the original backing of the mirror and glue that on top of the tassels, just to serve as a brace for the tassels to sit up against and to keep them from like falling down or like wilting. I also cut a hole in the back to be able to hang it up on a command hook and not have to worry about the hooks on the back that I now removed, because I would use them for the frame with the elephant. So once I was done with the tassel mirror, it was time to put the wood letters up on the wall, and I decided to put the bed on a different wall than the accent wall with the wallpaper. So now I'm just centering the L, which is the middle letter in my niece's name, on the wall, and drawing out an arch so that I can curve the letters on the wall. All I did to create the arch was I tied a pencil to the end of a piece of string that met the bottom of that L in the center, and then I taped it just above the top of her bed to create the longest distance possible, and continue to trace from the center over to the right and from the center over to the left. To the windows, I also added a second pair of curtains. They actually have a matching ikat print to the wallpaper. You just can't see it on camera. I'll try to get a close-up so that it shows a little bit better, but they were very wrinkled, so I just decided to steam them and steam the pink ones, which were less wrinkled but still had some creases in them from being in the package. So that is the end of day 3 and the end of this video. To see the final reveal, definitely check out part 2 of this video, and we will put the finishing touches together. What's up? Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video. Today we are picking it up on day 4 of my 3-year-old niece's bedroom makeover. I was finally able to get this dresser out of my storage unit. I've had this dresser since I was a teenager, and since I had it in storage and wasn't using it, I figured it would be best just to give it to my niece since she is a kid, her clothes are smaller, so she would make better use of it than I would. Also from storage, I was able to pick up this rug that I've had for so long and never even used, never took the tag off of it, as you can see. But I picked those 2 items up so I can finally figure out the layout for the rest of the room, which you will see changes a few times because I either wanted the headboard of the bed to go on the wallpapered wall or the dresser to go on the wallpapered wall, but the issue I had with that is the heating vent. It kind of is in the dead center of the wall and I didn't want anything blocking it, so the dresser doesn't end up on this wall. Even though it does fit pushed all the way into the corner, I felt like it didn't look great with the mirror on the wall all on one side of the wallpapered wall, so it just got moved to a different wall. So now that the dresser is not going on the accent wall, I am just putting some storage cube systems in that corner, and that is going to be what ends up on that wall in the end. So yeah, just placing 2 cube storage units in this corner and taking a step back and trying to figure out if it's going to work or not. At this point, I'm bringing in another mirror that I put a fresh coat of spray paint on. This is another mirror that my sister had in her garage that she wasn't using, so I figured I would use it in here. It goes pretty well with like the wallpaper and the theme of the room anyway. At this point, I was unsure if I would use it as the mirror for her dresser or if I would put it somewhere else and use the DIY tassel mirror that I made for her dresser. I put it here to ask my sister for her opinion because I know my niece likes to look in the mirror and see herself before she gets ready to go to school. So I knew I needed to put a mirror at her eye level somewhere in the room. So I didn't know if it was going to be this one or the one that I DIY'd, but this mirror ends up being used on her dresser, which you will see in a minute. So now I've paused on the whole mirror dilemma and moved on to hanging up the elephant and the frame. So I centered a piece of painter's tape in the middle of the wall to know exactly where I need to hang the frame, and I use the same exact hack that I use to hang the bookshelves to hang the frame. Leveled a piece of tape over the 2 hanging D-ring hooks on the back of that frame, traced them out, leveled the tape on the wall, and then put some nails straight through the trace marks that I made on the tape and hung it up that way. Then I moved on to hanging the mirror that you saw earlier above the dresser. This is where it is going in the end. So I also use the same hanging hack again, where I trace out the hanging mechanism on a piece of painter's tape, put it up on the wall, and level it, drill through the holes that I traced on the tape, and put some wall anchors in and some screws, and then hang it up on the wall that way. Now I am just adding some knobs that my sister had to the dresser. I'm not exactly sure where she got them from, but the knobs that I had were pretty inexpensive Amazon knobs that I'm pretty sure were plastic and not even metal. So these knobs were perfect because they're just little glass balls, which I feel like is better for a kid anyway. It's not anything with a sharp edge that they could hurt themselves on. So I was just putting those on. Also, these knobs perfectly match a lamp that I am going to use in here as well. Here we are on the final day, and now that all the furniture pieces are in place, it's time to decorate. Right now I am adding some baskets that I got from Target. Then I just screwed in the wall hooks, the ones that I spray painted in the dark gray, and the gold smiley face wall hook. I feel like these are perfect for kids because they're larger, and I feel like just would help a kid learn to like pick up after themselves and hang up their coat when they come in. Also from Target, I picked up this set of 3 pillows. Well, when I bought it online, it came in a set of 3, and I believe it was actually for the Christmas or maybe just for the fall and winter time. But I picked this up because I felt like it would be perfect for her room as well. One of them is like a faux fur pillow, the other one is in a shape of a star, and the third one has snuggle up written on it, which is something that my niece loves to do, and she actually says it all the time, that she wants to snuggle up and watch a movie and have popcorn. So when I saw that online, I figured it would be perfect for her and picked that up as well. I put some boxes that can also be used for storage in her little reading corner as well. I got these boxes from IKEA. They were very inexpensive. And then I put back the elephant that she loves so much to be her little reading buddy, and another one of those Target baskets that I picked up. Since I used the taller mirror for her dresser, I decided to put the tassel mirror that I DIY'd up on this wall at her eye level so she can see herself right before she goes to school, check out her hair, make sure it's how she likes it because she's very particular. Here is the lamp that I was mentioning earlier. It's another thing that my sister had that she wasn't using, so I figured it would be good to use in here. And then it also matches the knobs that I put on the dresser perfectly. And I am just setting up this doll table and chair set that I actually bought her for Christmas a few years ago, but she never really played with because she was a little too young for it. But yeah, I figured I'd put that here on the dresser because I feel like toys are just decor that kids can play with. Also, the quality of this table is very impressive. Like these little legs being screwed on with like a proper mechanism is it just like really blew my mind. This thing was better made than some furniture pieces that I currently own. Who is it? Come in, Malia.
Wow! Wow! This is great.
Do you know what this says right here?
What?
It says snuggle up.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you like it?
Yeah.